It is 3 o'clock on a Tuesday, and we all know what that means. Another riveting episode of Behind Breaking Bond. You will laugh, you will cry, it will become part of you. Introduce yourself, young man.
Andy Kahan, riveting. If you think we should use another word besides riveting, I'm the director of Crimestoppers. We'd love to hear from you.
I don't know. They might come up with bad names to call this now. Joining us is defense attorney Emily Toto. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We really like this segment here because we get a chance to hear from them. We've heard from a few along the way, but we really haven't heard a lot from defense attorneys when it comes to the whole defendants out on multiple felony bonds, the revolving door at the courthouse. So it's always good to get a defense attorney's perspective. Tell me again, we were talking earlier, what have you kind of seen over the last couple of years?
Well, I don't know if it's what's happening, but in the last 25 years, for the last 2 years, I've seen a lot of people repeating crimes when they're on bond. And sadly, several of my clients are allegedly reoffending when they're on bond. And this has become a new thing over the last 2 years, I would say. I routinely have clients who I'm appointed to, and they'll get out on bond, and then I'll get an email from the court coordinator saying that they picked up a new law violation. Or when they're in custody also, they're picking up new law violations. They're tending to file more cases against people who are inmates for robberies or other violent crimes. But I think that I've seen an uptick recently.
So you would say this is kind of a recent trend based on your career being in the Harris County criminal justice system and courts?
Right. For the last 25 years, or so the first 20.
You've only been doing this 4 years.
That's right. All right. Yeah.
Hold on.
But I'd say that within the last 2 years, I've seen an uptick in people who are on bond, allegedly reoffending and getting their bonds revoked, but then getting out on bond again and again and again.
Would you say that the practice before what we started seeing from like 2018, 2019 on, it was judges were still giving everybody a bond, but it was if you violated the bond.
That's it. Name over.
Right. That's what it was.
Yeah, but it seems that I have clients who are on bond and then they'll raise the bond and then they'll make that bond and then they'll get out on bond, and it doesn't stop. And sometimes judges set bonds high enough that they think the person won't be able to make it, and then sure enough they come up with the money and they do make it, and then it's a revolving door because sometimes they have to commit more crimes just to make their new bond. So,
Right.
Yeah.
And I think people don't realize that sometimes folks in the criminal element, they're able to get their hands on large sums of money quicker than you or I ever could.
Right. Well, because sometimes people store for a rainy day. They sometimes know
It's
that
like a
they're
Sopranos episode,
Right.
a little secret thing,
Right.
stash in here in case,
right.
of emergency. How does this affect you as a defense attorney? Let's just hypothetically, you've got someone on bond for, let's just say, aggravated robbery.
Right.
So how does this affect you?
Well, so I've had clients on bond for aggravated robbery, and then they'll go back and commit another aggravated robbery. They'll be arrested for that offense, but they'll also have some open cases that they might be able to pin on him as well. And so the DA's office has gotten smart in that if they can charge him with 10 felonies, they'll charge him with 10 to get leverage.
Yeah.
So it makes my job harder because maybe the first case was defensible, but when I'm faced with 15 other cases, it makes my job a lot harder. It also causes a backlog because they have to contact all the complainants, all the victims, and the person, the victims aren't getting their justice. And sometimes they'll dismiss some charges just to get a conviction on one. So it makes my job harder because maybe the first case was defensible, but if I'm faced with 10 or 15, it's
there's one with good evidence.
Right, exactly.
What do you do?
Right, or if they jump bond, then they can file a bond jumping case, and that's a no-brainer. So if their first case was defensible, bond jumping is almost indefensible because did he sign a reset? Was he supposed to be there? Was he there? No. Case closed.
You've seen things that Andy and I have talked about in some of the Breaking Bond reports where you have defendants out on bond in more than one county.
Right. Well, we were talking earlier about a client of mine who I was appointed to out of a case in Harris County. He allegedly picked up a new offense in Harris County, was arrested on that. He was already on bond out of Galveston County, and he had a case out of Brazoria County. So he was essentially on 3 different bonds, picked up a new case here, and he signed up for deferred adjudication. I was not his lawyer. And he's just going to be transferred from one county to another county. And it seems like one hand's not talking to the other.
I mean, how could you successfully complete probation if you got,
You're
right?
already violating it.
Yeah, it's not sensical.
Right. You're already violating it by not reporting.
Yeah.
And so I think that they set him up to fail. But also he made the conscious choice to accept that offer because he just wanted to get out. So it's a desperation versus people just wanting to move cases versus, counties not talking to one another.
Right.
So it's a lot. There's a lot of factors that go into
The
that.
whole like backlog, because we know there's this huge backlog down there at the courthouse. Who kind of benefits the most from that, the defense or the state?
I will tell you that the defense benefits from backlogs because people move, witnesses move away, they change jobs. I've had some murder cases where the forensic pathologist has moved to another state and they're not able to testify. Sadly, people pass away. The main eyewitness, doesn't remember anymore. So the people that benefit the most are the defendants. But with that said, as a defense attorney, I'm not going to complain about it.
Right, yeah.
As I said before, a reset is as good as an acquittal for as long as it lasts. That's what the motto is. But I do understand that victims need their justice and they want their day in court. But I recently resolved a case. It was a murder case that has been pending since 2017. And this was a result of the double whammy, Harvey and COVID.
Yeah.
And so we've had people languishing in jail through no fault of their own, but through, catastrophic nature events and pandemics.
And no one wants to see someone sit behind bars pending a trial. I mean, that's not the way
to jail is not meant for longevity.
That's right.
Right.
But also too, neither is parole, right? I'm sorry, bond.
Right.
Bond is supposed to be a short period of time.
Right.
No one is supposed to be on bond for 2, 3, 4 years.
Well, but there's also a money-making aspect to that. In that, and this is another trend that I've seen in the last 2 years. It seems now everybody who gets out on bond has bond conditions. It didn't used to be that way.
Right.
They would pay their bond and they would sign the paper and they would show up. Now they have to report, they have to do urinalysis, they have to have GPS monitors, they have curfews, it's almost like they're already on probation. It's almost like they're already being punished.
Serving a sentence.
Before they've even been convicted. And
There's
so-
definitely overuse of ankle monitors.
Oh, yeah,
You know what I mean?
definitely.
It's kind of like, oh, okay, you're out, here's an ankle monitor, and it doesn't matter what the offense is. We just think that'll help appease everybody in a way.
Right, and the financial penalties in and of itself, having to pay for the monitor,
Right.
having to pay for the drug test, having to pay you have to get an ID card. I mean, it's putting the cart before the horse, but it seems to be the uptick. It's the norm. The majority of my clients, they get out. Well, no, all of my clients that get out on bond have to report the next business day or the next court day and get served with paperwork to tell them what they can and cannot do.
And I'm sure you probably have defendants that they're ordered to wear a GPS monitoring device and you're thinking, why?
Exactly. But I mean, and the alternative is they put a safety zone where they can't go around a certain area. But some judges, if they have not had any violations on their monitor, we can come back and ask for it to be removed. But by then, I mean, just the stigma of wearing a monitor and, I mean, when it gets warmer in Houston and you can't wear shorts.
Right, and if you're in a position where you could actually go back to work or go back to your normal life, I mean, nobody wants to be walking around with an electronic monitor.
Right, I mean, it's the stigma alone, but there's a lot of shaming that goes on in our system. I get it, because we want people to get the point, right? If there was a conviction with no consequence, then everyone would just go out and commit crime.
Right, yeah.
So I get the point of people having to feel the weight of being accused, but there comes a point when enough is enough, and we're not out here shaming people And I'm thinking about one client in particular. She was a MBA, retired postal worker. She was accused of murder. That case settled recently, but she had to wear a monitor. She had a health condition that it was creating issues around her ankle, and she was just so ashamed to have to go to church with that. And she wasn't even convicted yet, but everyone was looking.
How
at
long
her.
was she out on bond? If you don't mind me asking.
From 2017 until
Recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In fact, we picked a jury on that case, and the state turned over evidence late. So they just, the judge granted my motion for a mistrial. They ended up refiling the murder case because there's no statute of limitations.
On murder, right.
And they issued a summons for her. So she was actually just out on a summons, not even on a bond for up until recently. So, but she was one of those people that she was always going to show up to court.
Yeah.
She wasn't someone that the court had to worry about.
Yeah.
But yeah, that case lingered from 2017 up until February 22nd of 22.
But let me ask you this, and maybe this is an unfair question, but have you had a defendant that has a criminal history, picks up multiple bonds or multiple new cases, and they're innocent?
I would have to go back into my vault. So I could think about.
You don't have to answer it right now.
Yeah.
Let's ponder.
Well, there's
Take
the
the
cases that I think about are mostly people who are arrested, who are on bond. They're arrested and put in, and they can't make their second bond.
Yeah.
There's been an uptick in people in that scenario who have picked up new cases in custody. Robbery for taking someone's commissary, things like that.
Yeah.
But that's the whole idea of leverage. If you can charge someone with 5 crimes to get 1 conviction, then that's what the state will tend to do.
I mean, do you ever see defendants that you think, maybe it is fueled by drugs, and they got caught, they're in jail, where maybe that's where maybe they need to be in there for a while to kind of clean out.
Well, I've told several of my clients' parents. So we get a lot of triangulation. The person's in jail, they call the mom calls me. It all comes down this way. It's always the defense attorney's fault. I get it, they're desperate. But there's been several times where I've told the parents, look, I think the best place for him right now is in jail because he needs to dry out. Or what are you gonna do? If he posts bond, he's gonna go back to the same neighborhood, people, places, and things. And so I know it's tough love, but sometimes people might be better off in there. Also, when the family is financially strapped, they tend to want to put the money on the front end and pay the bondsman.
Right.
And then they don't have enough money for a lawyer. And so I tell them, I said, is the bondsman going to go to court for you? Is the bondsman going to try your case for you? And this is no slight on bonding companies. I have several friends in
Disclaimer.
business, sorry. But a lot of times people get so desperate that they're not looking at the big picture. I have that all the time, especially on my major felonies. I'm saying, look, let's focus on the person not doing 25 years in prison versus just spending 6 months waiting for their trial.
Right.
So, but yes.
I'm going to give you a great example. And this is, Randy and I have talked about this, and I've talked about this a lot. And one of the defendants is charged in the murder of the off-duty New Orleans police sergeant in Grotto.
Mm-hmm.
One of the defendants is 19 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Prior convictions as a juvenile, was on 5 felony bonds in 2021.
Wow.
Bond was revoked, reinstated, you know the drill, back out, back out, back out, back out. And I'm sitting there, do you think the court did him any favors by continuing to put him out when it was fairly obvious to anyone actually looking at this going, this just isn't working? And now you've got a 19-year-old who is looking at a potential death penalty or life without parole. That's what kind of gnaws at me. Right.
Well, a lot of there could be, it's a 2-part process. The court had the ability to not give him a bond. I mean, the state could file a motion to hold him with no bond. So there's a 2-part process for that. But the second part of that is the family. They're enabling this person, and the fact that they keep posting his bonds, like at some point they have to put their foot down and say, I mean, you're better off in jail.
Yeah.
So it's a two-part process. And the thing is that the judges know about the person's criminal history. When people are on bond and they pick up another case, the new case gets sent back to the original.
Right,
So
yeah.
it's not like we're dealing with a case in the 228 and the 263.
That's right.
So they already know who this person is.
Yeah.
And so I don't understand the thought process that goes into that, especially if they're accused of violent felonies.
That's been the most difficult thing. Well, I think for both of us to really understand, because you look at these court documents, and again, all of this, every single breaking bond report is based on court documents that anybody can go look at. But you look at someone on paper,
Right.
and it's like you can almost see it happening again.
Right.
Right? It's like, okay, he's been out 4 times. He's got 4 aggravated robberies. He's going to pick up another one.
Right. Well, and also, as I stated before, a lot of times when there's open aggravated robberies that haven't been solved, they'll pull this client's file and run the MO and see if there's any similarities.
Yeah.
And then he might be good for 4 other cases.
Right, yes.
So he might not have committed them while he was on bond, but he's on bond when they charge him.
Right.
So, yeah, but I mean, it's a slippery slope, and it's something that's just within the last 2 years, I've seen a lot more of it.
Another thing too that I will never understand, putting somebody on bond for capital murder, because you're basically, I mean, you're facing 1 or 2 things. I mean, of course you could get acquitted, but if you're convicted, you can face the death penalty or the rest of your life in prison.
Right.
Am I going to go back to court? And you know what I mean? It's sort of like.
I haven't had, the last capital murder case I had, my client was in custody. And then the juvenile client we talked about earlier, they did not release him. So there's very few people. I've had one client who was charged with capital murder that was on bond. He came to court every single day, and he was eventually acquitted because it was a bad ID. This was back in 2001, when the good old days, as I remember them.
But back in the day, nobody got out on
Yeah.
bond for capital murder. It just did not happen.
Do you know how many people we have right now on bond for capital murder?
I have no idea.
Give me a guess.
10,
Higher.
50.
Higher.
What?
Yes.
Keep going. Go.
100?
Close. Higher.
Shut. 90, 150,
Lower.
125,
Lower.
110.
I'll give you that. Yes. 100 and
Can you believe that? 110 people.
That's,
Yeah.
I'm in shock.
And we've already found a few that they're gone.
Well, we found 4. We've also found 4 that were out on bond that actually were charged with additional murders.
Yeah,
While
they
on
killed
bond for capital
someone
murder.
while out on bond for capital murder.
Was it a witness that they were trying to, I mean, that's usually how it happens.
No, I mean, the one case is Martha Medina,
Yeah,
the grandma
right.
coming out of McDonald's.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That was trying to be carjacked and so forth. That guy was on bond for capital murder and ag assault with a deadly weapon.
Which the thing that's just, I've never understood that, is because he had a purse. You know, you got what you wanted.
Right.
Why did you have to run over this grandmother?
Yeah,
you
I know. Well, I know.
Are you
That's
seeing
terrible.
a change from your clients where they're just more vicious, just more? There used to be an adage, you'd rob and run. Now
Right.
you rob and shoot.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to say that although the clients I represent are charged with the most serious of offenses, they're not any more vicious or violent than the ones I've had
In the past.
And this is just me.
Yeah.
Right now, I probably have about 10 murder cases, a lot of aggravated robberies. I have seen an uptick in human trafficking and compelling prostitution. That's something that, I don't know if it's just they weren't charging it before, but
I think it's awareness too,
Right.
you know, because the public is so much more aware of it.
Right,
And you hear people talk all the time that Houston is kind of a hub for
Right.
human trafficking.
yeah, and a lot of times they make deals with the woman who's charged with prostitution, that she'll give up her pimp, if you will.
Right.
There's a lot of times they charge the woman even though she's being compelled to do what she's doing.
Right.
And the person who's trafficking her gets off scot-free. So I think that there's a bit of change in the regime and the way they look at charging these crimes, which is good.
Yeah.
You know.
I know that you're an attorney for a living. I'm sure you're a very good attorney, but you got a daughter, you live here. I mean, you're concerned about public safety. You want the streets to be safe.
Yes, I have a daughter and a son, and, you know, I fear for my daughter when she's driving down the street, if she honks her horn or, you know, you just never know if someone's going to pull out a gun, if you're going to be a victim of road rage. My best friend was getting gas the other day. Luckily, she had her wallet because she was going to pay with her ATM card. They pulled the camera, someone was crawling, they opened her door and stole her entire purse.
Wow.
I mean, it's just to have to go get a new ID, a
That's a
remote
hassle.
control, keys to your car. I mean, sometimes it's better just to leave your car open so that you don't have to go and replace your window.
Right,
You
yeah.
know, that's what I was just in Colorado yesterday, and no one locks their car doors because there's not a lot of crime in Fort Collins.
Yeah.
But it's the inconvenience of it all, and someone stole my purse, and I had my remote control, my keys to my car, a wallet that had pictures of my grandmother who was deceased, cash.
Yeah.
And it was an expensive purse, and so yeah, I mean, I've been a victim of crime. I'm not a proponent of crime. I want everyone to be safe. When I'm out of town, I'm afraid my house is going to get broken into. It's just, I don't have a sense of safety, even now. You know, I have my puppy at home. When I let him out in the front yard, I have to keep an eye on him. I'm afraid someone's
people
going to
will
steal him.
snatch dogs.
Yeah, I'm afraid someone's going to steal him. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to, sound that I'm, paranoid, but we always have to have a sense of awareness and know about our surroundings.
You almost have to be a little bit,
Yeah.
when I pull my truck in the driveway and I get out, I lock it. My
Right.
truck is constantly
Right.
locked.
Well, they're still in catalytic converters now.
Yes.
In my neighborhood, I live in Rice Military, Magnolia. There's been a rash of catalytic converter thefts. In fact, there was, and then the other day it was on the news, someone was walking around in the bushes with a gun.
Yeah.
Now I've lived there since 2003.
And that's a nice area.
That used to be a nice
Yeah.
neighborhood. The fact that I now have to, look over my shoulder and, say a Hail Mary and have a bat next to my bed and whatnot. Things are changing around here. I'm not gonna lie. Things are
No,
changing.
crime is the number one issue, period.
Yeah,
Right,
Especially
definitely.
this upcoming election cycle.
Definitely.
Reasons why.
Yeah, and I personally, I've reported many times, and the DA has even said it, this whole idea of releasing people on multiple felony bonds, that's one of the reasons for an increase in
Right.
crime. And I think that COVID, we had never gone through a pandemic before. And I think that maybe people that, if they were kind of on the edge
Right.
anyway,
Right.
that may have pushed them over. I mean, that was a hard
Right.
thing for everybody to deal with.
Right. But I guess my point is, and I've asked my clients, if you're already on bond and you get out, why aren't you laying low?
Right, yeah,
You know?
yes, yeah.
I mean, your job is to just lay low. Stay under the radar.
What do they say?
Do what you gotta do. Well, a lot of times it's people, places, and things.
Yeah,
If you release, and that's why when people are offered probation, I ask them to look at themselves in the mirror and think long and hard. You're gonna go back to the same community, you're gonna hang out with the same friends,
right,
and they're not gonna do your time. You're gonna do your time.
Right.
So if you don't think you can make it, then don't take it.
yeah, there's always gonna be, someone is going to tempt you,
Right.
that's just sort of, and my hat's off to people that they get out of, they're in the criminal justice system,
Right.
and they get out and they become successful.
Right.
And there are people that do that.
I've
There's
had
no doubt
so
in my
many.
mind that there are.
I've had so many success
Many.
stories.
Yeah.
I had a client who was probably one of my favorite clients. He was hooked on meth. He had a meth case. He got probation, finished his probation. He's been clean and sober. He has a successful business.
Right.
Another client got convicted of aggravated robbery. He got a 12-year sentence, did 6, I did his parole hearing, never reoffended.
Yeah.
I mean, there are success stories out there, and I think we might want to, focus on those too, because.
Definitely, yeah, yes. I mean, it's not all gloom and doom. I mean, there are people that they're in a bad situation and they become better for it. They learn from it and they become better human beings, better citizens. And
Right. I don't mean to interrupt you, but sometimes bad things happen to good people.
Yes, yeah, they do. Yes.
I had a client who, when I was a prosecutor, I prosecuted him for aggravated robbery, or maybe, I think it was aggravated robbery, aggravated assault. He was convicted by a jury. Eyewitness came and testified and said it was him. He did 9 years in prison. He was later exonerated by the governor because he was actually innocent.
Wow.
It was another person who did it.
Yeah.
And so, he lost 9 years of his life. I met him after he got out. I apologized to him. We had a good cry. We had a good hug because I wanted to apologize for my part in that. It wasn't malicious on my part. I dealt with the evidence that was handed to me.
Yeah.
But I mean, those things happen.
Nobody at the courthouse has a crystal ball.
Right.
No one was there. Whenever
Right.
the crime happened, nobody was there
Right.
that's involved in it.
Right.
So yeah, you have to do your best with what you have.
Exactly.
But I've done stories in the past on people that have been exonerated. I mean, there's no doubt there are people that are in prison right now that they're not guilty. I'm not naive.
And that's why I've always told victims that they are the ones who actually want to make sure that is the person.
Exactly.
They do not want someone to go to jail who didn't actually take their family member's life or rob them.
Right.
Well,
They
they're
have
not-
a vested interest.
Yeah, they're not getting justice.
Right.
You're not getting justice if the wrong person
Right.
is.
And that's what I tell when I pick juries. I talk about who wins when the system fails, the real perpetrator, right?
Yeah.
Who loses? The victim, the jury, the defense attorney. I mean, there are people who win when the system fails, and it's the person who really did it.
Right.
And so, our system's imperfect, but I've made it my point to be, as hone up on eyewitness identification because a lot of my cases boil down to that. But people's memories are faulty. They could be inebriated. They could be dark. They could be elderly. There's just a lot of things that go into it, and we have to make sure that they get their fair trial and that what happened to this person that I prosecuted doesn't happen again.
And one quick
That's something I
question,
live with.
before we wrap up. If you were picking a jury, would you pick Randy and me?
That's a loaded question.
I think I would because
Have you ever
said
been?
it all.
I've never been. Have you?
I want to be on a jury. I actually had to sit through a jury selection even though I knew I wasn't going to get
Back
picked.
in the mid-90s, Michael McSpadden was the judge.
Uh-huh.
It was a capital murder case.
Uh-huh.
And I had made it all the way to the end.
Right.
And the state wanted me and the defense said no. And it was like a 2-day ordeal to get that
I
far.
would love to be on a jury.
Me too. I think it'd be
I've had
fascinating.
several friends on juries and they told me all about it and they didn't always acquit the person.
Right.
I mean, if the evidence is there, then you have to do the right thing.
Yeah.
All right, let's cut a deal right here. You pick him, you pick her. I'll watch.
We'll do it.
I'll go in and out.
We'll do it.
I would love to be on the jury. I really
Well,
would.
Andy, who are you picking in the championship?
Well, since my underdog St. Peter's Peacocks, which you can't go
Yeah.
wrong with winning for a Peacock, I'm thinking it's destiny that Duke's going to win.
Yeah.
Coach Case last year.
You wanted an all-bird final.
I did
Yeah.
one. I did.
Well,
So it's got to be Kansas, but there is no all bird.
I know. Well,
There is one bird that can be in it, Kansas Jayhawks, right?
it's so boring now. It's
Yeah.
the same four people, four teams.
Right, yeah, it's like, yeah. Hey, Emily and Toto, you were fascinating. Thank you so
It
much.
was
You're
nice
going
to
to
be
have
here.
to come back.
I will come back and we'll talk about that thing we're not supposed to talk about.
Yes, we will. We have secrets.
Actually, we're going to talk about that. Don't we have something tonight?
Yes.
Hold it.
Be sure to tune in to Fox 26 News at 9 for tonight's, I'm not going to say it.
Riveting.
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 Emily said it. Riveting. episode for Breaking Bond. See y'all at 9. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it.